Hey, want 5% off your ticket purchase to the next Browns home game taking on the AFC North contender, the Ravens? You want to attend this game or any game in Cleveland for 5% off? Go ahead and visit Ticket IQ. That's our new ticket sponsor. Use their promo code they've given us, LPG5, for 5% off your first order. Ticket IQ is your smartest ticket search, offering the largest and most diverse ticket inventory for live events. All tickets are guaranteed with 100% buyer protection. This is providing a safe and secure ticket purchase for any type of live event, including the Browns, Indians, Cavs, Buckeyes, Blue Jackets, concerts, the WWE, and more. Whenever you find a ticket listed as a low price guarantee, you'll know that that's the lowest ticket price for the ticket on the market. So visit Ticket IQ today. You're going to find our links to go ahead and use that promo code in our iTunes description and on our Twitter at Brownie Podcast. Cheers.
Brownie Sunday, wake up in the late afternoon. Call Rod Bloom just to see how he's doing. Yo, what's up, Rod? Hey, Chad, what's happening? You thinking what I'm thinking? Cleveland Sports Talk, man, it's happening.
Hey, welcome into the Brownie Sunday podcast once again. This is Chad Painter, as always, with my co-host, Rod Bloom, Vice President of Cleveland Sports Talk. How you doing this fine Monday, Rod?
Hey, Chad. I'm going to say I'm doing pretty good. I've gotten, moved forward a little bit from yesterday, so yeah, I'm not feeling too bad.
Awesome. And we bring on our special guest today, Jake Burns. Jake is on Twitter at Jake_Burns18. He's of Browns Film Breakdown. That's at Browns Film BDN on Twitter. Also a contributor at Waiting for Next Year. That's at WFNY Klee on Twitter. How are you today, Jake?
Hey, I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on. Could you just share a quick little background on yourself, what projects you got going on, and what is going on in the life of Jake Burns right now?
Yeah, it's full on football season. It is constant sort of film analysis, seeing where things are with the Browns, trying to draw light to, from a schematic standpoint, what the Browns are doing well, what they're not doing well. Obviously, if you follow the Browns Film BDN or Browns Film Breakdown channel, both that and the Twitter feed and the YouTube channel, I try to post as much informative, enlightening stuff as I possibly can while trying to bring a balance to this is what happened, this is why it went wrong, here's why I think it went right or wrong, vice versa. So I do the Monday breakdowns. Those went up today. I do write for the Orange and Brown Report pretty exclusively right now. I do contribute to Waiting for Next Year every now and again, but really it's mostly behind the paywall at the OBR. We try to cover as many schematic angles as we possibly can. So I write a lot for them, and I'll cover some things. The Nick Chubb runs I'll probably cover from here's why it works standpoint, or I'll probably cover the Baker Mayfield interception late and what he was thinking and why it went wrong, that kind of stuff, any of that stuff. So my week is usually packed with schematic breakdown things, and that's kind of my angle. I didn't see really anybody else in the industry doing it. I obviously have a background in football. Just because you play football doesn't mean you can talk about it. I studied it and coached it and all of those things, and it's a big part of who I am and how I enjoy football. So I wanted to bring that out to the fan base. I did a lot of work last year in this realm on Twitter, kind of created this whole Browns Film Breakdown angle that's really been enlightening for folks. I think it's doing pretty well with the same goal in mind as last year's Monday breakdowns on my personal page you mentioned. It's just what happened, and here's why it happened, and here's your good plays, your bad plays, sort of thing. So, my end goal, guys, is, as you know, hopefully, and I hope everybody else understands, is to try to strike a balance in this whole thing. If they did something wrong, they want to try to point out how they did it right and give credit where credit's due, and try to shift blame where I think blame is due. So that's kind of my goal.
Fantastic, man. Well, I can tell you that there are definitely people out there who are really benefiting from what you're putting out there, and you're elevating their understanding of what's going on play by play, and it's just awesome to have you doing these things for us on Twitter. We're going to move on here to what are we drinking now that we have Jake on. And Rod, why don't you top us off, man? What are you saying cheers with tonight?
Well, once again, Chad, I've managed to pick out a beer that you're very familiar with. So you probably know how to pronounce this or say it properly better than I do. I just happened to grab one at the store. I guess the brand is Dora, or is it? Is it Dam?
It's Dom, D-A-M-M. It's Dom.
Dom.
And
I was thinking following the game that we could call it Dam.
You can, yeah, absolutely can. That's the mistake. So the reason Rod says that I know this beer is because my wife and I spent our honeymoon in Barcelona, and we discovered this brew called Dom. But we had like a lemon version. It was actually way better than a Blue Moon, and it was just lemon and fresh and so good in this area. Just always sunny out. It was perfect beer. Really refreshing. But yeah, the Dom is how they told us to pronounce it. But the Americans, obviously, we go over and we say, "Can I get a Dam?" And they're like, "No, that's not that's not what you're
That's
ordering."
not it.
Yeah.
That's not it. This is what the one I'm drinking is a lager, and it's 5.4%. Like you said, brewed in Barcelona since 1876. And in my experience, when you find a beer that's been brewed continuously for over 100 years, it's usually pretty darn good. And I would say this one's no exception. So, like you said, it's an award-winning beer, and I mean, it's got a really nice flavor. Really nice flavor. Out of, I've had recently like some Mexican beers and that, and they're all kind of light, kind of watery in that. And this really has more of a barley taste to it. Just kind of puts it toward the middle, and it's just a nice, easy drinking beer, but it's got a really nice flavor to it also.
Okay, so it's just robust and rich. It's a really well done lager. I haven't had that one.
It is, yeah.
Good. Yeah, I haven't tried that, but I'll definitely be on the lookout since you sent me the picture in Messenger. So, cool. So Jake has something to share with us too, so we'll pass it over to Jake real quick.
No, I mean, you guys brought this up that you wanted to bring it up. I am actually probably the worst person to ask about what they drink. I've never been, or what I'm drinking currently. I've never been that conversation you guys were having might as well have been Spanish. I've never been a big beer drinker. I occasionally will do something mainstream like a Yingling or a summer shandy from Leinenkugel, just stuff like that. But I probably drink like 3 times a year. And now that we've had our first child, I find myself drinking. It's very weird because it's almost like beer is like coffee. And I've never been a coffee person. I live a pretty bland life in terms of beverages. So I might be the worst person you guys could have brought on for that segment.
So are you a water guy or what?
Yeah, I try to drink a lot of water. I mean, I do drink soda, which is pretty terrible, obviously. But yeah, I don't know why. I've just never. It's almost like beer can have a sort of acquired taste.
Definitely.
And the same with coffee, and I've just never been into them. It's very strange.
That's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, that's totally okay. We've definitely had people on who are into Diet Coke and all that jazz, and that's funny. I'm the complete opposite. I don't remember really the last time I had a soda. I just don't drink soda. I stay in the wheelhouse of just drinking a lot of water every day, but I love beer and I love coffee. And funny enough, I am bringing to the table tonight talking about the Southern Tier cold pressed coffee pumpkin beer. So I'm bringing it full circle. Southern Tier, they just opened up in Cleveland downtown on Prospect just this month, beginning of this month, or beginning of September, I should say, now that it's October 1st. And they had a pumpkin fest last night. The Browns game was on every TV there at the bar, and they had these really cool flights out with all their new, fall seasonal things that they wanted people to try. And this one was probably my favorite, and it didn't taste like coffee. It had the perfect sweetness. It was a really easy drinking beer. Loved having it with a margarita pizza and a pretzel. We were out with friends. It was a really good time. But yeah, not much to say. I mean, cold pressed coffee, pumpkin beer, you can't go wrong with that. So I really enjoyed it. So that's what we're drinking. Thanks for bringing those to the table, guys. Let's move on to our next segment, Thriving or Diving. Hey, remember when we had to avoid Browns players in fantasy and in our prop picks for the Sundays coming up? Well, no longer. We get to have Browns players on our team, and we get to place our prop picks on the Browns. It's amazing. And you can do both of these things now with the brand new fantasy app, Thrive Fantasy. They have been killing it this year. So fun to play. Instead of the regular old humdrum, we pick players, we do cash games, we know how to do this. I mean, that's fun. But with Thrive, you can build a fantasy team by actually picking prop picks on the certain players you want on your team. Say you think that Jarvis Landry will go for over 100 yards and a score. You can actually place your prop pick on Jarvis Landry doing that, and you'll receive fantasy points for when that happens. If it doesn't happen, sorry, you don't get points on your team. But most likely, you'll be right because Jarvis is amazing. He's contagious. So jump on Thrive, which is also contagious. Play with us today at Thrive Fantasy on Twitter. You can find our link to go through Cleveland Sports Talk and make your new account today at Brownie Podcast. Or if you simply want to just get online, get on your phone, look this up, and get the link to get your new account, it's just a bit.ly. It's bit.ly/Cleveland Sports Talk. Really simple. Start playing with us today and prop up and live to thrive. Cheers.
I have to add one more thing to the what are we drinking? Just
Okay.
with what everybody's saying, I think we have it pretty well covered because I drink beer and water. I haven't had a soda in over a year, and I've never liked coffee. So, I think we have a pretty unique combination between the three of us. That's pretty cool.
Perfect.
So, thriving and diving, the thrive has to be Nick Chubb. 105 yards, 2 touchdowns on 3 carries. I mean, that was just pretty sick. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for Nick Chubb. I think hopefully we'll be seeing a bit more of him very soon. As far as diving, we could probably talk for the next hour, but it was the officiating in that game yesterday. Just god-awful officiating. And for now, I'll just leave it at that. But that's my thrive and dive.
Oh, and it's across the nation. Like, it doesn't matter what team you're a fan of. I've seen Steelers fans on Twitter saying the Browns got hosed. Like, this was the worst officiating that could have taken place for them. And there were some bad calls even for the opposing team as well. But it was mostly for the Browns, and it just really got messed up in that way. I'm sure Jake will chime in on that more, but Jake, what about you? What's thriving and diving for you?
Good ones by Rod there. Nick Chubb's top end speed. I'm going to pick a different one, but I did want to add the Nick Chubb. Not only Nick Chubb doing the 2 touchdowns, but was really reminiscent. If you guys paid attention to the ACL injury, Nick Chubb, like freshman year Nick Chubb, where he was a man amongst boys as a 19-year-old, where he was out running everybody. Now he 4.52 at the 4.5s at the combine. Obviously good football quickness, but I didn't necessarily see that separation at Georgia late in his career as much as I would have liked. Like, I think Michelle, who's obviously doing well in New England, just had a nice game, had great top end speed, and I actually preferred Sony. But the thing that caught my eye about Nick Chubb is he ran 21 miles per hour in a couple, and a little bit of, like I said earlier, 21 and some change on that run, which is in the top 3 for quickest, top 3 for highest running back speed on a run this year. So that was really interesting because we obviously know Nick Chubb is a plus running back in terms of vision, feel, patience, those things. But those 2 things really stood out to me. The top end speed to run away from those DBs with an angle on that first touchdown run where I thought he was going to get caught. And then the stop-start on the second touchdown run was really impressive. Stop-start at the line of scrimmage where he dodged a free-running linebacker and a nice little 1-2 cut at the second level against a safety before he broke along. So, sorry. Anyway, I want to do Nick Chubb. You actually stole mine, Rod. Good job, man. And,
right.
yeah, that was impressive. No, it's good, man. That's good analysis. So, I'll go thrive is obviously to me going to be Baker Mayfield. I think Baker made some mistakes. He obviously turned the ball over 4 times or had his hand involved in 4 turnovers. I could probably say that he's solely responsible for 1 turnover. The interception off Callaway's hands, it was a pick 6. Obviously, I thought the ball was thrown really clearly away from the hook zone defender, put that curl on his outside shoulder. He just slipped and fell off his hands, interception. Mm-hmm. The fumbled snap exchange. As a quarterback, I used to play quarterback. If your hands aren't under the center, that's usually indicative of the snap count was misplaced by Treader. Nobody moved but Treader, so I'm led to believe that Treader got the snap count wrong. Now, as a quarterback, if I were being interviewed, I would take blame for it the same way Mayfield took blame for it, but I try to also be realistic about it. And then obviously the turnover on the fumble that Maurice Hurst did a nice job of getting his hand on him. I probably put that one on Mayfield because he gets to the top of his 5th step and that ball needs to be out or he needs to feel pressure. He kind of hangs on it at his 5th step. But, I mean, his only really bad ball was the ball thrown down late in the game there, the ball that I thought he tried to force to Callaway. I think the All-22 will show a play where he should have thrown it in front of that safety, but he threw it upfield to the safety. I'm not entirely sure why. I think Callaway had the angle to cut that ball off toward the middle of the field. But those were the only bad plays. I thought he was exceptional. He trait that I loved about him in early October carries over to the NFL. The timing, the accuracy, the ball placement, the vision that is necessary, the sort of pocket quirkiness where the ball that he got out to Njoku on the split zone play where Oakland had it schemed up perfectly with the blitzing safety and corner, and he somehow comes off of that inside zone fake, defeats those 2 blitzers, drops it to Njoku for a nice gain. But it's everything. It's the climbing the pocket awareness that I was a little hesitant on. He's improved that, and it's actually become a positive part of his game. He makes anticipation throws. He looks comfortable. The game doesn't feel too fast for him. I leave this game feeling better than I did the Jets game because Oakland had an entire week to plan for him, and I thought he handled himself well. Could have easily been 27-28 for 41 instead of 21 for 41. Had an intercept, could have had 3 touchdowns. It goes on to shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I was very impressed with him. He makes all of the NFL throws that are necessary. He drives the ball where it needs to be driven. I've never felt as good about our quarterback. I wasn't alive during the Bernie Kosar thriving days. I was born in '89, but I've watched tape. I just feel good, guys. He's everything I wanted him to be, and it just looks right. So yeah. That's my thrive. And we should be extremely excited about that. That's the first time they've scored 40 points in a game since 2009. Think about that. The kid's first start. That's the first time they scored 40 points since 2009. The first time they've scored 30 since 2014. And that's your byproduct. Even turning the ball over 4 times, they still scored 42 points. You score 40 points, you win most games in the NFL. So we feel good about that. The dive to me is going to be Greg Williams. Now, I am not harsh on Greg Williams. I thought he's done an exceptional job this year. The problem was the Browns had no answer for Oakland's quick throw passing game, and they did not adjust as I thought they needed to. The Browns do not disguise coverage. What I mean by disguised coverage is showing a quarterback something pre-snap, altering that coverage post-snap based on what a quarterback's expecting. So what I mean by that is if I'm a quarterback, I break the huddle, I get to the line of scrimmage, I start looking over a defense. Defensive coverages are described as the deepest level. Who's covering the deepest level of the field? So if it's cover 2, you typically have 2 guys covering the back half of your defense, cutting it in half. 2 typically. There are little wrinkles you can do. You can do cover 2 invert, where you send the safeties up and haul the corners back for deep half. But for the most part, it's going to be pretty vanilla. So your deep 2 is in cover 2 is your safeties, and then your corners have the flats, meaning the down at the line of scrimmage in their inverted area on the outsides. Cover 4, you're going to get corners having a fourth of the field, safeties having a fourth of the field, equal force. Cover 3, 2 corners playing deep, and a safety covering his third middle of the field. So what I would like the Browns to start doing more of, because it became very obvious as the game wore on and Derek Carr had an idea. Every time he dropped back, he knew where he was going with the ball. We complained about pass rush. Well, Derek Carr's getting the ball out really quickly because he's diagnosing really quickly. The Browns do not do any sort of disguising coverages. They very rarely do it. The one time they did do it was when they rolled E.J. Gaines to the field. E.J. was in at the wide corner, They rolled him deep to invert cover 2 a little bit, and he actually ended up making that right before half interception off the tip Jared Cook ball. So they're not doing enough of it. They're not confusing quarterbacks, and that's causing problems. Yeah, they do little wrinkles like dropping a defensive lineman out, Myles Garrett, Larry Ogunjobi here and there, but that stuff gets pretty easy to diagnose. What gives quarterbacks the biggest fits is thinking a defense is something and then post-snap having to process it's something different. That is something they need to work on, especially now with Terrence Mitchell going down with this forearm or wrist injury that's happened. The Browns have to do something to fool people because they cannot just line up. It was very clear they can't just line TJ Carey up out there covering number 1 receivers on occasion like he was forced to and expecting positive results. It just is not going to work out well. So the Browns need to add some wrinkles. I know Greg Williams loves to blitz, and he does some exotic blitzes, and that's all great, and I don't expect him to stop. But they need to do some things in the back half of the secondary to confuse quarterbacks and put a hold on, 450-yard passing games where the quarterback just really seems unbothered by what's going on the defensive side of the ball.
And Rod and I have brought that up in the past where we have not seen a disguised defense throughout this season. So that's a really good point to bring up. Obviously, that's way more in depth, and that'll help us be able to keep our eye on what the Browns are doing on defense and keep our eyes on some certain guys and hope that Greg Williams shifts them into some disguised defenses post-snap. And I love the thrives. This worked out really perfectly. I went a different angle on these, but I brought Baker and Chubb into my thrive together. So I'm glad that you guys set this up for me. My thrive is just that Oklahoma and Georgia are coming together in the form of Baker and Chubb. And it was so fantastic to see Baker run with him into the end zone as he's running that first touchdown. And then on the sideline, just pretty much give the biggest Baker hug you can give. And see these guys coming together on the Browns. And so it's more of a chemistry, a confidence, an intangible thing that I'd like to hone in on and analyze. That's an amazing thing for our team that going forward. And that really set Chubb up for a positive game going forward there on out. My dive would be the fantasy points of Antonio Callaway. Antonio Callaway, like you said, Jake, maybe Baker kind of underthrew him or whatever you would say. I mean, the baseball field was a problem too. He slipped on the turf.
The cow pasture.
What's that?
The cow pasture they were playing on.
Yeah, the cow pasture they were playing on. And
yeah.
And maybe, I didn't know, I wouldn't have known because I didn't play quarterback, that maybe Treader was off the count. But that first drop by Callaway that sucked. And then you saw that Callaway missed a big touchdown that he could have grabbed. Maybe just one step he was off. Maybe Baker threw him a little too far. But definitely the 2-point conversion in the corner he should have had. That was right in his hands. And there were a couple other midfield grabs that he missed. He just dropped them. And I think another touchdown possibility that he missed. And it's just so many points could have been on Callaway's docket. And, man, he just completely missed the boat. I guess that the highlight, though, that got him some points was that 59-yard grab. And then, what did he have, a groin or hamstring injury? Like one step, and he was in. He actually shook the defender off into the out of bounds. And then he just had to take one more step, and it was a touchdown. He actually fell out of bounds. It's like, oh, man, just take that one more step. Just, use all your energy to get in there, and it didn't happen for him. So my dive is the fantasy version of Antonio Callaway falling away. And I'm hoping this isn't indicative of him being like the next Corey Coleman with the drops or the next Braylon Edwards, because we're hoping he's the next Tyreek Hill. But with that being said, that's my thrive or dive. We've already kind of broken down a lot of the game here, so let's go more in depth into some game breakdown. First of all, where is everyone at with the loss of 45-42? Like, what were some of the game changers for you guys? What could have happened differently to give us the W? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Rod, go ahead, buddy. I'll follow up to yours.
Jeez, I don't even know where to start. I mean, just kind of thinking through the game, there's that whole Was it their first possession when they had the ball first and goal at the 1?
Mm-hmm.
And they failed to get in the end zone. I mean, just the play calling there. I understand on first down, Baker probably decided. I think Baker went with the pass there, and they just missed it. So I understand, but I'm thinking the 2 plays before that, it was were 2 runs by Carlos Hyde, 6 yards and 6 yards, and you're at the 1. I'm giving the ball to Hyde 3 times there, and
Yeah,
I'm
they
just
handed
giving it to him 3
once.
times and pounding it. Yeah,
Right.
so they throw on first. I think they ran Hyde on second down,
Yeah.
and then they had that weird play that just takes too long to develop on third down that resulted in a 3-4 yard loss, and then they're kicking a field goal. It's like it just so takes the air out of the team when something like that happens. You get down there and a field goal doesn't feel like points at that at that point. But
Yeah, that play actually it is cute. It's actually an identical play to what New Orleans did to Cleveland. If you recall when Alvin Kamara it was right down on the 2-yard line, they did the exact. That's a big play right now in the NFL. It's sort of just a little backfield. It's a jet sweep in nature, but it's just backfield deception to flip it. And if you watch that play, Kamara, if you guys recall, Kamara scored, but they got called for holding.
Yeah.
And yep, and I'm telling you guys, it's lined up identical, and it is run identical. The problem is, Callaway's not quite as quick with initial burst as Kamara is. They didn't block that play side defensive end, and the defensive end sort of stayed. They ran. The front was different. This is technical, but the front they were facing was different. It was an even man front instead of an odd man front. The defensive end stays upfield. They actually slanted their 3 technique, and they slanted their interior. So the Browns kind of chased that. They had nobody for the defensive end, and when you run that play, you just kind of hope that the backfield motion catches that defensive end off guard.
mm-hmm.
But obviously that didn't happen, as the DN stays home. The linebacker scrapes on top of that slant, and that's why there were 3 guys on top of him. It doesn't help. Like, they are trying to make Antonio Callaway. I think they're trying to make him something he's not. To me, he's more Deshaun Jackson than Tyreek Hill. He's a guy who can take the lid off of a defense. Like, he's a Will Fuller for the Texans.
Yeah.
I don't want him to be their jet motion guy. Like, that guy to me is Duke Johnson, somebody that can do that sort of thing in a more natural sort of way. Callaway wasn't really used that way at Florida. So I think he feels out of his element doing that, and I think it's leading to some focus issues in other parts of his game. Because you're right, earlier when you were referencing the fantasy impact, he could have easily had 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. That all over the top, I think Baker just missed him, but that route was open. The 59-yard touchdown, I feel like he should have scored. I mean, Garyon Conley chasing him is pretty quick and had an angle, but like you said, I mean, he's kind of falling away. He easily could have reached the ball down and scored. I think that kid is obviously missed last year and has missed an entire season of football and is getting back into it. So the less that's on his plate, the better. I think they're putting a lot on his plate with the jet motion stuff and alignments and all these quirks they're doing with him. I kind of feel like they should reel that in and give him simplified things to do. So, I mean, I love him. I think he's got a lot of potential, but if you're mentally putting a lot on a guy's plate, you can't handle it. That's when you see focus issues and the drops kind of rear their head. So, that's sort of where I'm at. I didn't mean to cut you off, Rod, with that, but you're right about that play. That play's quirky. It can work, but you have to get it against the right defense. And if you don't block that defensive end and you just expect, hey, we're going to beat them real quick to the sideline, that backfield motion better be quick. And like if you watch it in slow mo, the mesh point where those two are crossing paths gets a little wonky, and they actually kind of do gray shoulder pads, and it's just never going to work that way. So I get what the Browns are trying to do. They saw it work. It's a copycat league. I think I have seen now the Saints have run that play, the Texans have run that play, the Chiefs have run that play, and then I think maybe Seattle have run that exact play. It's pretty popular right now down on the goal line. So I get it. I do think that Todd Haley gets a little cute down there. He could probably use like we're talking about, 2 really good power running backs, you just kind of turn and hand it off 3 times and maybe a 4th time if you weren't in yet, and then mix in play action on a later down sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, as far as being over you scored 42 points. You feel good about offense. The turnovers, the defense gives up 45, but they also allowed 17 points off of turnovers deep in their end. So there was the pick 6, which doesn't go to the defense, and then the turnovers inside their own 20-yard line. They actually held them to 10 points instead of 14. You take those 17 points off the boards, guys, it's 42-28, perhaps even more because the Browns don't lose the football. So it's 4 turnovers cost you that game, and that's where I'm at with it. They're the better team. They have more talent on offense and defense, and they should have won that game around that 42-24 type score. That there's no doubt about it. They cost themselves that game. Yes, there were some terrible officiating decisions that we all saw and we all want to talk about, and I can certainly get by with the concept that the refs cost them that game. I get it. But there were also opportunities that the Browns just kind of gave away. And then when you're relying on 50-50 calls to win you games, there's a chance that other 50 side of that ratio is going to win the battle, and that just kind of happened. So you can't look at that game and say, well, we didn't do anything wrong. It was all the NFL. That's not the situation. There was an equal part in that the Browns played. So I only referenced offense and defense, guys, because the special teams the Browns are putting out on the field is so bad that I can't quite quantify how to put it into words. And I know quantify is a numbers thing. It's really hard. I get fired up about it because, okay, go team by team that the special teams offers. And I'm going to go on a rant. Just shut me up if you need to. Field goal team. Obviously, field goals cost them week 1 and week 3. There's no arguing that. Breakdowns on the line, week 1. Breakdowns in the kicker making kicks week 3. Okay, terrible. If you watch them on field goal block, they don't really rush. They're not even giving much of an effort to block opposing kicks, which to me is a problem. Like, that's your job, to get out there and rush. Pay attention to that. Maybe they'll clean it up next week, but it's something they're not doing well. Okay, kickoff team. Luckily, this is the good part. This new kicker we've brought in, Greg, is doing a fantastic job of booming it out of the back of the end zone. That makes it easy. So cool. Great job. If you watch the Steelers game when Zane didn't kick it in the end zone, it wasn't very good. They were giving up healthy returns to Switzer left and right. Okay, go to kick return. How this roster doesn't have somebody better than your strong safety to return kicks, and I like Jabril Peppers, and he was a fine return man at Michigan, but he's not doing well. And if you watch the things going on in front of him, they're not really blocking anybody. I think somebody had tweeted me today that they started inside their own 24 separate times on Sunday. Let that thing, I'm sorry if I can't cut, let it go out of the end zone. Just stop catching it. Start at the 25. And that's like an NFL thing that should be going on. I would never return kicks. Like, I just would start at the 25. It's silliness. Unless you're like Cordell Patterson, who's really good at it for New England. I would just don't. Don't return
25. Yeah,
it's not rocket science. Or here's an idea. Bring somebody on your roster for somebody like Derek Willis or Rod Streeter, who's just a return specialist. Put Matthew Days back on the roster. Let him return the kickoffs. Like, it's not hard. The punt team has averaged a penalty a game, if not more. The punt team and punt return. So the punt team has had 2 punts blocked. The punt coverage team, which is a part of the is a part of the punt team, is the punt coverage, is giving up one long return a game, and this dates back to the preseason. Then the punt return team is averaging a block in the back a game. Denzel Rice, who he had a nice preseason, he's athletic, he had a nice job in the slot against second teamers, has been absolutely terrible in every aspect of the game he's been asked to produce in special teams. He's had a penalty. I might be wrong, but I know he's at least had 4 penalties, and I think he's had a penalty a game.
It seems like one a game. Yeah.
Yeah. We decided to move on from longtime Chris Tabor, and we bring in Amos, who everybody knows his track record is not good.
He's proven it.
I'm trying to figure it out. Like, Hugh's recognizing this in press conferences. We got to get better. What are you doing to get better? Like, every head coach I've either played for or coached with, the good ones, I've kind of said, these 3 things are going to be what I bank on. I trust my coaches to do certain things, but my hand is going to be heavily involved in how many mental mistakes are we making a game? The Browns are making a plethora of mental mistakes every single week. And what I mean by mental mistakes is, and it ties into my second thing, blocking somebody in the back when you shouldn't be blocking somebody in the back. Aligning wrong when someone shouldn't be aligning wrong. Snapping the ball before the guy is set in motion. It's little things constantly. It's just little things. And the penalties part of it play into it too, because that's repetition problems. And yes, it is not all on Hugh Jackson, which my third thing, special teams. Every head coach prides themselves, the good ones, pride themselves on special teams being a positive part of your production on a Saturday or Sunday, even Friday for high school head coaches. They pride themselves on that. Yet we're glossing it over. A team that is talented but can't slip in any part of the game and give anything away is giving away special teams every Sunday. And it's frustrating to me. Like, I know that a lot of people think I dislike Hugh Jackson. And a part of the problem with bringing Hugh Jackson back for a third year is that it's really hard for people to just push the reset button and just forget about 1-31. Like, he's carrying 1-31 feelings with him. So people are really at wit's end with the whole thing. So it's like, if this was a new coach, maybe you dismiss it and say he's trying to figure it out with a new step block, but it's not. It's the same issues we have seen for 3 years. And I think Hugh is a great person. The players play hard for him. They like him. Joe Thomas speaks to that. That's great, man. That's great. But if where I work, if the people aren't meeting their goals, it comes back to the boss or the general manager, and in this case, your head coach, that is not getting – it is a results-oriented business, and he is not getting those results. So somebody has to be held accountable. I get it. Like, that Amos plays a part in it. The players are messing up. Hugh's not forcing them, but it is a results-driven thing that you have to get those results from the people who are underneath you. You want to sit in the coach's office and say, well, that's my final decision to make. That's cool then, buddy. That's your blame to take too. Like, that's your blame. So I know people think, like, I blame Hugh. That's not the case. It is the case of, at the end of the day, you hired who you hired. They're an extended arm of you. So you have to get those results from them. And if that's not happening, you need to step in and say, I'm coaching the punt team myself, or I'm coaching the kickoff return team myself. Because at the end of the day, it's your head that's on the chopping block. So he's got to get it figured out. There is nobody to pawn blame off anymore. There are no excuses this year. You're 1-2-1 for a reason now. So you either get the results, or there are going to be some seriously good head coaches that are going to be very interested in this roster. I'm telling you that right now. So
that's true.
Figure it out. I don't even know where we are in the terms of conversation right now, but I hate it. Guys, it pisses me off to no end, because it's not rocket science. Everybody in the NFL is doing it right except for Cleveland, and it just really pisses me off, because it should never be that way, and it is on somebody's shoulders that some people don't want to put. Like, I just started saying, well, just blame the fans. The fans aren't being patient enough. No, this is good enough to win now. There are no excuses. Flat out, there are no excuses. So get it done. You want to say, well, that quarterback made that mistake. Well, did anybody get in his face and say, Baker, you're either throwing it to somebody wide open on this weak side flood, or you're throwing it 13 rows deep into the freaking stands? Is that happening? Because if that's the case, we need to know about it. Like, it's just – I'm frustrated, man. This team should be 4-0. This team should be 4-0. They're good enough to be 4-0, but it's the little things that are adding up.
Well, why don't go ahead? I was just going to say, why don't they drop Amos and bring Josh Cribbs in to coach the special teams? He's been around the team. I think people would go crazy over that, and I bet he'd be a hell of a coach.
Well, I was going to ask Jake that. Is Josh a part of the problem? He's on the coaching staff there.
I don't know, guys. I don't know. When I was at camp, it didn't seem like he was very involved other than return guys. Like, he was just a part of the return guys. Now, does he have a hand in Jabril Peppers deciding it's a smart idea to bring that ball out of the end zone? Perhaps. Like, it's always tough, guys, to sit from afar and assign blame. Like, I really try not to, except for downline blame. Like, downline blame of the special teams always comes back to the head coach. Like, I'm sorry. You probably get too much credit when it's going right, and you probably take too much blame when it goes wrong. But that's kind of the job you sign up for. It's just like being the president of the United States. Like, it goes harshly one way or the other, unfairly, I should say. So his job is to get the most out of them. Now it's very easy that Josh Cribbs could be sitting in special teams meetings and saying, "What the hell are we doing? Why are we bringing the ball out of the end? We shouldn't be." It's possible, but it is on everybody involved in the special teams to get it figured out, because it's a bad look right now. It's actually worse. It's an embarrassing look right now. So
something has to change. I mean, something's got to change.
For sure, the fans love Josh Cribbs. So if they made that announcement, I'm sure the people would be all about it. Now, how educated is Josh in terms of how kickoff should work and all those other things, I'm not sure, but it's there's a lot that goes into that. But there is no denying that they have the single worst special teams in the NFL right now. And if that special teams was even just average, guys, just average, I have without a doubt in my mind that they'd be 4-0. And that's super frustrating, because there are enough athletes to pick from in the NFL. Like, justifying keeping Denzel Rice over Jeff Janis, an experienced special teams player, it makes you go, what are we doing? What's going on? Like, those are fair questions, and they have to be asked, and we need to see better results, because, again, results-driven business, it comes down to who's in charge of them, and it's a downline business that is going to always fall back on the head coach. So if Hugh gets it right, he's the king of Cleveland if he gets this all right. If he continues to do the stuff that he's doing wrong, he's going to get the blame that he should get. That's just how it works.
And hey, you're preaching it, man. And, that is a sneaky factor in these losses and why the record looks the way it looks, and especially in why we're able to score 42 points and still lose. Like, that's a sneaky factor, the special teams. That's a great topic that you bring up. And if I could speak to Jabril Peppers, which I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, everybody says this, but, man, I'm looking at this game versus the Raiders, and every time Peppers gets this ball on special teams, I'm like, what is this guy doing? I've literally never seen him return a successful kick the entire time he's been here. And
he looks like he forgot how to do it. I mean, really, he just looks so uncomfortable.
Here's the thing,
he looks what a strong safety looks like returning kicks.
Yeah, yeah.
How many teams in the NFL are having a strong safety align as their kick returner? I mean, I get it that he did it in Michigan, but it's a different level of football.
That's right.
So, I mean, he doesn't see the field. I mean, you're telling me you can't put Nick Chubb back there, who has excellent vision, and expect a better result? What are we doing? What are you doing?
Right.
That's right. You can see Peppers every time he just runs it a couple yards and gets tackled. He gets up, he smashes his hand on the ball, and it's like he relives his glory days of going, well, I could do this at Michigan. Why can't I do this here? And it's a totally different level. He just doesn't understand why he can't do it, and he challenges himself. That's what he's doing. When he gets the ball, when he knows, I could just start this from the 25. Like, our offense could start from the 25 if I don't run this. He's still getting it and running, thinking, I am going to challenge myself to get further than the 25. And then he fails again and again and again. And you're right. That comes back to Hugh. Why is nobody saying, dude, you cannot do this? The rule has been changed to where we can start at the 25. We don't want to start at the 10 over and over and over.
Yeah.
We understand that you were successful at this in Michigan, but we got to pull you. We love you. You're a strong safety. We're going to put you in the box. We're going to do everything we can to make you successful. But we're not doing this anymore. And I hope that we see this change, and very soon. But let's move on. that was phenomenal. But let's move on to Baker. I want to ask Jake, how high were you on Baker before the draft? And, let's talk about, obviously, what his performance in this Raiders game.
Yeah, so I don't make this claim softly, but I didn't see anybody talking about Mayfield before I was. People came on late October. I kind of pegged him as my number one guy in the middle of October after the Ohio State game, where I'm just like, nobody's playing as well as this kid is. Yeah, he's a little shorter than everybody else, but nobody's playing as well as this kid is. And if we eliminate some of the weird factors that aren't going to affect his NFL success, I mean, I'm not sure what we're missing here. So he was my guy from middle of October on, and it didn't change for me. So the traits that I have enjoyed, the timing, I mentioned a lot of them earlier, the accuracy, ball placement, timing, but also leadership and just aura of the person that the Browns needed, which is something you can't always quantify, has been every bit as great as what we hoped it would be. So he's giving you the full range of the spectrum in just a week, 6 quarters time, guys. If you look at it, they've scored 21 points plus 42 points. In 6 quarters, they've given you 60-plus points of Browns football. When's the last time you can say that? It's a completely different offense. He's a completely different quarterback than anything we have seen here in a long time. And every one of the positive traits that I've seen from his time at Oklahoma have carried. The game doesn't look too fast for him. He's in complete control of what the offense is doing from a comfort standpoint. So, like I said earlier, very encouraged. I think we should all be very encouraged from what we've seen from Mayfield.
How do you think his development is? I mean, obviously he looks good out there, but did you expect him to be where he is right now, or did you think it was going to take longer?
To be honest, the Browns fooled me. They kind of kept me thinking he wasn't prepared. I've made this argument and people gave me hell for it, but whatever. But if he was this much better than Tyrod Taylor in camp and preseason and everything they've seen, I'm not sure why they were painting this picture that he's not ready, because it's a complete injustice to your organization not to play this kid weeks 1 through 3 if he was that much better than Tyrod. And you guys know just the way I know that the difference was immediate in the New York game. Yeah. Like, it was obvious. So you can't tell me that sitting 2.5 games made the difference in him being successful. That he is who we thought he was. So why were you underselling him? Like, I bid on that because the way the organization was selling it, because I'm like, maybe he's just not practicing well. Obviously, the media and fans can't see practices during the year. After camp, they shut off practices. Maybe he's not practicing well. I want to be patient with the kid. But he, again, I just said it, he is what I thought the kid was. And the development is ahead of schedule. He looks like a guy who played 3,600 college snaps and played under multiple different coordinators at multiple schools. He knows football. He has a feel for football, and he's comfortable within what Todd Haley's asking him to do. So his development to me is ahead of schedule. Things will slow. He'll learn from that turnover late in the fourth quarter. He'll continue to get better in terms of the game slowing down, knowing where to go in certain situations. But I have no major gripe for how he's playing, which is rare for a rookie and only a game and a half into his career.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I was nervous because of that picture they painted when he went in, when Tyrod went out with the concussion. And I went, oh, man, I don't know if he's ready. And I believe the story. I believe that narrative, like we could be screwing up another quarterback, because that's all I've ever known, right? And especially it's fresh because of Kaiser last year. We really can't screw up the first pick in the draft. I don't want this to happen. But preseason, all to that time when he came in and played versus the Jets, I was chilling, relaxing, looking like Kermit the Frog, sipping tea, going, we got a quarterback. Like, I knew that this kid, watching his vision, watching his progressions, I mean, I was amazed watching him through preseason. I'm like, I'm watching a professional quarterback who's going to grow into maybe the next Drew Brees. Obviously, that still scares me. I wanted that to be preserved. I wanted, a middle-of-the-road quarterback like Tyrod to kind of carry us for a while until he was ready. But it is very clear that he is very, very ready, and he is making those reads. He looks like he has no nerves in his body. He looks like he's just super comfortable out there, like he's at home, just chilling. So it's amazing to have that. Any concern, Jake, with his height? I mean, I know you just said you weren't worried about it going back to early October, but he had at least 2 passes that I saw batted down in this Browns game. Things like that are going to happen, and maybe you can shed some light on it. Maybe it's not his height, because we have seen him kind of go gunslinger and do the Drew Brees thing where he's throwing underneath the armpits of some of these giant linemen. But do you have any concern with his height going forward and those passes being deflected from time to time?
No, so I need a bigger sample size on the batted down passes. I think some of the issue is anytime there are balls batted down, it is usually twofold. A quarterback is staring in the direction he's going to throw for too long, and then it is likely that the offensive line isn't trying to keep the hands down of who's in front of them. So I think it needs to be a sample size thing. I have not seen any play missed by Baker that I think, man, that's really because he's too short. I haven't seen that. He's seeing the middle of the field well, that the way you would want him to be able to see the middle of the field. So I don't have concerns about it personally. I could see where people are because of a couple balls that were batted down. One was a screen. Anytime it's short at the line of scrimmage like that, which both throws were, you always have a chance of it getting batted down because it's a low trajectory throw. So, for me, it's not an issue.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is these defensive linemen, they put their arms up. Their arms are 9-10 feet in the air, and anybody can have a ball batted down. So I agree. I don't think the height's an issue.
For sure. Yeah, that's really, affirming. And we've even seen that with Derek Carr in this same game, who's a couple inches taller than him, obviously. But another big guy on the offensive side of things, our new left tackle, Desmond Harrison, maybe his new Orlando Brown in a way. What do you think about him watching film and breaking down the film? How do you feel, how confident do you feel with our new left tackle blocking for Baker Mayfield in our backfield?
You got to feel good about it. I mean, I think he rated out in the top 3 offensive lineman-wise left tackle and pass sets. So he graded out well. He continues to get better week to week. He's showing the type of comfort you want to see. I think he had one holding call, but I didn't really agree with that holding call. Kind of looked like he put the guy on his back. Just oddly enough, that first quarter holding might have been the only holding call I saw all day that was actually called. But, yeah, I mean, for the most part, he's playing well. He's protecting the left side of his your quarterback's edge because he played with Tyrod too. He's kept quiet, which if you're lineman, you're not talking about them a ton. That's usually a good thing. They're keeping things in check. I never thought they needed to replace Joe Thomas with that level of player. You only get Joe Thomas once or twice a generation. You just have to get a guy who's serviceable at left tackle, and he's proving to be pretty serviceable, and he's actually playing above what many of us have expected. So it's been a really good value play for the Browns.
How about the rest of the offensive line? Do you feel like anybody's vulnerable on the line to losing their position, or do you feel like the unit's playing well together and everybody's coming along? What I'm kind of getting at is, do you think Austin Corbett has a chance to crack this lineup at any point?
Well, he was inactive again Sunday, so I don't think they view him as a major part of this year. I think the future would be for him to play, either take over at right guard for Zeitler as his contract goes toward being removed, or taking over at center for Corbett. But no, the 5 that are playing right now, I expect to play all 16 games. I would be surprised if somebody is supplanted as a healthy replacement. You know what I mean? I had obviously had hope that Corbett did eventually do that this year, and I thought we were trending in that direction, but he was once again inactive Sunday, which caught me by surprise because Watford's about as bad an interior offensive lineman as I played for the Browns in a long time. He got 3 snaps in heavy personnel, and he's just not very good. So I don't know. I don't have a great answer there, guys, and I don't know if we should try to seek out – somebody should try to seek out an answer on that one from Hugh Jackson, because it doesn't make sense for a kid that I thought was respectable in the preseason is now just 2 out of 4 games inactive and gotten maybe 8 snaps total in his 2 active games. So I would expect all 5 offensive linemen that are playing right now to be this year's guys, and I would expect next year maybe Corbett competes for one of those interior spots, or maybe they move on from one of their center or right guard.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me.
Well, let's talk our receivers, too. We talked about Callaway in depth and kind of his case of the drops. A lot of this had to do with the baseball turf, it seemed like, or the, what did you call it? The cow pasture?
I call it a cow pasture. Yeah, it may have been being nice. But...
yeah, so, yeah, we don't know why that's still there. It'll change for the Raiders soon enough. But we saw plenty of cases of the drops here in this game, and maybe had a ton of factors. Maybe you can shine some light on it here, Jake. But, I mean, we saw Jarvis Landry drop some crucial balls. We saw David Njoku. He caught 1 or 2 crucial balls for us there, but still had a case of the drops in this game. Baker Mayfield's first career touchdown was to our blocking tight end, Darren Fells, who just kind of bulldozed his way to the end zone after making a pretty sweet grab. But also Rashard Higgins dropped a major first down on his first possession. And we just got to have these receivers grabbing the ball for our rookie quarterback to maybe not instill confidence. He's got plenty of that, but just to make some plays for this guy so we can win some games with him because he's clearly talented enough. These receivers got to grab the balls, man.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of excuses to make for them, guys. You just catch the football. I mean, it's pretty simple. I imagine they'll tell you the same thing if they were asked that question. It's not a technique thing to me. You just either you do or you don't catch it. You use whatever means is necessary to catch it. They got to be better. I think he's got better as the game wore on. And, Jarvis had the one early drop that was knocked out of his hands, and a ball deep down the left sideline there. He kind of got his fingertips on it. It was a little high. Thought he could have come down with it. But Njoku was fine too. I mean, he had one of his better graded games of the year. I thought he did a really nice job on several different plays catching the football. The thing that I worry about with Njoku is some guys have a knack for dropping balls at important phases of the game, important stages of the game, and they needed that ball from him down the right hash caught because the Raiders had mounted a 34-28 comeback lead, 20 unanswered points. The Black Holes getting pretty raucous early in the fourth quarter. The Browns needed to mount a drive, and that was a drop on third down in a crucial moment. He had that crucial drop week 1 against Pittsburgh on the right sideline on a corner route on third down. So he just kind of has a knack for dropping balls at inopportune times, which makes it magnify his issues with reception. So
that's true.
Yeah, it needs to get cleaned up. They just have to catch the football. They're being given opportunities from a good young quarterback. They need to make it happen.
You think there's anything to the chemistry thing, with the receivers and the new quarterback? I mean, I'm sure they've practiced together, but not a ton. I mean, obviously these guys should catch the ball, but I'm hopeful that maybe the more they play together, hopefully it'll get a little bit better too.
No, there's no doubt it's a repetition sport, Rod. I mean, it's how the ball spins out of his hands. It's how quick it gets on you. All that stuff comes into it. And to sit there and ignore the fact that he didn't play with the first team guys for a good majority of the season so far, you'd be lying to yourself. That stuff football's as repetition as any sport, muscle memory, all of that stuff. So it probably plays a part into it, but you guys, I would consider probably like me on this, where there are no excuses. You just catch it. You just got to find a way to get it done. And there are obviously going to be parts that play into it, and they'll probably get better over time together, but they have to find a way in the here and now to get those balls caught. I don't care if it gets into your body and you use your hands to catch it in your stomach or chest. Just figure it out, man. Figure out a way to come down with the football.
And Landry did make that point. He said that Baker does throw a very different ball than Tyrod, and this guy can rip it, and they've got to get used to that. So put all these guys on the jugs machine. Hopefully they're doing it right now. And
crank it up.
Yeah, and to harken back to what Jake said earlier, I really like that take that we should treat Callaway as more of a Deshaun Jackson on our team than a Tyreek Hill. So hopefully Haley can really take some tips from Jake here and start to employ those, as well as Greg Williams on the defensive side. So take some tips from Jake.
I like the Will Fuller reference, too. I would take Will Fuller on the team, too.
I mean, it's I'm not trying to be I'm smarter than these guys. It's just kind of where my opinion is on them. Like, it seems like he's almost overwhelmed, and I think it would be wise if I'm sitting there back when I used to develop offense, if I have a guy who's a really good athlete but is overwhelmed, how can I get the most out of him with leaving him to do the minimal amount of thinking possible? Just let his athleticism kind of reign free, and that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
Do you like the playing time, between the receivers right now? I mean, I guess it's pretty much always, Landry's going to be out there, and Higgins and Callaway. We really haven't seen Damian Ratley. He's another rookie. So, I don't know. I'm just kind of wondering if, if they're going to mix things up more, or if they're happy with what they're getting out of Higgins and Callaway at this point.
I think they're getting enough out of the guys who are on the field. I mean, the opportunities are there to get enough out of them. They just have to make the plays, and the quarterback's involved in that too. I don't think that they need to play Ratley. I think they play a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. They mix it. They're at an 11 personnel often, which is going to be 1 back, 1 tight end, and I'm fine with that because I think Njoku's their their fourth best receiving threat. Even you could argue third. But getting, 2 wide receiver sets, you play Callaway, and because you get the speed aspect of lifting the top off of defense, and then you're, you get Landry, who's your possession threat. So I don't have any problem with the discrepancy in snaps, and I think Higgins does a really nice job of being a solid third receiver who you can put in the outside at Z or X and allow Landry to sort of work the slot in that 11 personnel stuff. So I'm fine with it. I hope Ratley's getting better practice-wise, and if somebody gets hurt, he can step in. I enjoyed what I saw in the preseason. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think they could do anything differently snaps-wise right now.
Okay.
It would be nicer to have a bigger target for him, like Ratley would fit that mold, and he's a very fast guy. Obviously, losing Josh Gordon takes away that big target for Baker, but he does have an Njoku, and he already found success with a Darren Fells. I mean, we saw him, right? Mark Andrews was who he had great success with at Oklahoma, and we just got to have those guys for him because it seems like the Browns always got these little guys running around there, little fast guys like Landry and Callaway. They're having success, but it's always nice for him to have a big target, and hopefully Njoku and Fells can step into those.
And I think that they will long-term look for that. I mean, but guys, I'll say they're producing enough to win games. They're putting up points with the guys here. They'll be fine. They're going to score points this year. I think they'll probably try to address receiver in the draft, whether that's somebody like N'Keal Harry, the kid from Arizona State, a couple kids, DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss is a nice, interesting target. I would always love to get a Metcalf back in the Browns uniform. Just there are good options out there, and I think they'll probably address either that or interior defensive line in the draft, but they're going to score. They're going to be fine. I have no concerns about their offense right now.
And we'll continue that route here. We'll talk their running game. Should Nick Chubb be Rookie of the Week with these 3 carries for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns? I mean, unheard of. History's been made.
I think it's indisputable that he should be the Rookie of the Week, and B, he needs to see a minimum of 10 carries. Like, I love Carlos Hyde. I think he's a pretty sound running back, but he doesn't carry the ability that Nick Chubb does past the surface level. So I would be lying to myself if I thought that it was best for the Browns that you see Nick Chubb only get 5 carries a game. He needs to be a bigger part of the featured part of this offense.
So it was on the Dan Patrick show, I think, today or yesterday. Somebody pulled up the stat that there have been 1,100 people in the history of the NFL who have run over 100 yards and scored 2 touchdowns. And there's only been one guy who's done it on 3 carries. And it's Nick Chubb. So
it's pretty wild. And they lost.
It's a crazy stat. And what's even crazier is if he is Rookie of the Week, then we've had 3 in a row through the first 3 weeks on the same
Which is a good sign.
Fantastic.
Yeah, very good.
Great picks.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's not Austin Corbett, but
well, I mean, you guys got to look at it too. I mean, it's certainly the majority of the roster turnover has been like John Dorsey's done a nice job. I mean, think about it.
Definitely.
The Terrence Mitchell signing, the Demarius Randall for Deshaun Kaiser highway robbery. A good majority. Now there are guys who you're like, what are we doing here with Chad Thomas and Corbett, who you give those guys some time, but they're getting immediate contributions from the rookie class, and the Chris Hubbard signing and the undrafted free agent Desmond Harrison. I mean, there's got to be conversation that John Dorsey's done one heck of a job. Now, there are some things they still got to get better, special teams wise. The bottom part of that roster has to get better, but yeah, I mean, guys, they're getting really nice contributions from players that they just brought in. So all good signs for a first off season.
Now we go back to Jake. I talked about this, I think, a couple weeks ago. I want to see more split back sets, and they did it like the very first play of the Jets game, where they had Duke out there, I think, with Carlos Hyde, or it may have been Chubb, and so that it's another thing where you're kind of confusing the defense a little bit. Typically, they can tell what the Browns are going to be doing. If you have one back out there, that especially if it's Duke, they know that the Browns are going to probably try to get the ball to him. So I like having Duke out there with one of the other guys so that the defense doesn't know what's coming. And I don't expect him to line up like that all the time, but, give a guy plays a game like that at least.
Yeah, Duke's a Swiss Army knife, right? That's spot on. I mean, they need to use him in deception. They need to use him. Like, every time Duke Johnson's on the field, the defense shouldn't be thinking the ball's going to him. Like, he needs to be a part of the deception aspect of things, too. That's why I keep preaching I'd love to see him as that jet motion guy who they can quick toss it to and get the corner. Like, he gets the corner really well. Every time I watch him try to gain the corner, he does a nice job with it. So, I'm probably going to pin something this week on how they're using these offensive skill players. But I'm with you. They should have two backs on the field every now and again. Go in the gun and use Hyde and Chubb in the same formation and split zone from that direction where you have the backfield crossing in front of the quarterback. One's kicking out the DN, one is carrying the ball up inside on inside zone stuff. No, they need to be a little bit more creative, and there are situations where you could have all three of those guys on the field at the same time. So I do hope we see an expansion of their roles, and certainly getting them on the field at the same time is a logical argument.
Well, you guys pretty much covered Duke for me. That's what I was going to bring up as well, but you said pretty much everything I would have said and more. And the only thing I would add is, man, he had a beautiful catch from Baker. Baker kind of threw him a lob pass, and that was one of the nicest catches we saw versus the Raiders. So he's an excellent receiver, and I think you guys all agree that he should be utilized a lot more often in this offense. So let's switch over to defense then. It seemed like Denzel Ward was a little more quiet on this game, but Myles Garrett continues the dominance. How about that time he pushed Colton Miller into Derek Carr's arm so that he couldn't complete the pass? I mean, this guy's finding all sorts of creative ways to get after the quarterback and not get penalties.
Yeah, he can win with power. He can bull rush. He can win with speed off the edge too. He can do whatever you want him to do. Opposing defenses tell stories about him on the sideline. Just really good. He was even better in the run game this week. Like, Derek Carr got the ball out really quickly. That alleviates a lot of the pass rush. To a big part of things. It's harder to get home when the ball's out really quick. But he was really good in the run game, and that's where they needed him to be really good this week. But he also affected the pass here and there too. So he's an all-pro. There's just no way around that.
How often was he held in that game that it wasn't called?
I mean, when you look at I tweeted the earlier today that from the halfway through the fourth quarter on, he was winning around the edge, and he was being just hooked. I don't know, 10 times that I thought it could have been called. Now, holding's subjective, and anybody can call holding on any play, but the overwhelming amount of clips I saw where it was just, I don't know how you win as a defensive end when that's deemed legal by an offensive lineman.
Right.
What else did you guys like and dislike about the defense in this game versus the Raiders?
Rod, I'll let you go ahead first, buddy.
Well, it's been a constant theme for the Browns that they can't defend the tight end. They can't defend the underneath stuff. Jared Cook just over and over again, balls in short balls in the middle of the field, turned into big gains. I'd love to get Jake's take on what the heck they're doing wrong there. I mean, the defensive line plays well. Our corners seem to, cover decent. But the middle of the field is always open for the opposing tight end. And I think it probably drives everybody crazy.
Well, they need to get it rectified by next week because Joe Flacco is an obscene user of the running backs and tight ends. But, whenever the Browns were in zone, they isolated linebackers over the middle of the field and threw one-on-one balls, and they caught them. They did some split stuff where they caught the ball down the left sideline when he was matched up with Derek Kindred. They did when the Browns went to man situations. They ran some rub routes that were effective too. So I don't have a perfect answer other than they just have to win those battles in coverage, and they didn't win those battles when they could have won them on Sunday.
I'm just glad. I was going to say at least Benjamin Watson isn't playing for the Lions anymore, but they've got 3 top tight ends from the last few years. So, the Browns need to know what they're doing going into that game.
Yeah, and
there's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, John Brown is going full Steve Smith on this team, though. I mean, he's really throwing the ball to John Brown, and he's utilizing his wide receivers more than tight ends, it looks like, this year. So if we lock down a John Brown, I really think that we could pull it off pretty easily, hopefully. Alex Collins has not shown to be the running back that everybody hoped he would be from last year. He's had flashes, but I think they've definitely got holes in their offense that we can take advantage of with this defense. And this defense can be elite, and Jake's shedding light on it. Maybe Greg Williams is needing to step up in some certain areas of disguising. Even with Joe Schobert, he was one of my favorite highlights on the defense this week. And even though it seemed let a touchdown go to Jared Cook, it looks like he's being asked too much of to be on the field. But his field vision is great. He was making plays. He's all over the place, but maybe, he's one man. He can't do it all. He can't be covering a tight end and trying to play spy on the running back and do everything at the same time. But he was one of my favorites to watch.
Yeah, they ask a lot of Joe. They ask him to play deep middle and Tampa 2 stuff, which is where you send your Mike linebacker on middle of the field support. Play him at depth and ask him to kind of clean up things in the run game. He's obviously their cerebral leader who's aligning people and getting the calls and all of that stuff. So they do ask a lot of him. It's a tough ask often.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you hope for the best in terms of he didn't do a great job in pass coverage winning those battles this past week. You hope he can bounce back next week.
So who are we going to see starting at the other corner position this week?
Probably my guess right now is EJ Gaines. I think that they'll probably try to move TJ Carey back inside because it was pretty obvious in that game that they could not rely on they could not rely on TJ Carey at an outside spot. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I know that they are probably going to end up challenging their depth that is in that position right now. There's going to be a movement to the active roster this week. We're going to have to see who they put on the ad. But you need Briambati Calhoun to play better. Like, you need him to come back to being a reliable interior nickel defender, and he hasn't done a great job this year. So you need him to step up in a big way.
And he was there weren't a lot, but he was definitely a bright spot last season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He was, and he has been in his time. It was a wise pickup in the Sashi Brown era. But for some reason this year, he's had a really rough go of things. He's not tackling well. And they haven't played him a ton at the nickel after Juju Smith-Schuster embarrassed him week 1. So you hope that he can step back into that role he's most comfortable with and sort of figure it out.
Well, speaking of DBs, we'll move into a couple pieces of news here. It does look like Mitchell could be out for the season. We'll find out soon enough, which is a bummer. So obviously we're going to have to figure out that spot in the corner position for maybe the rest of the year, probably the rest of the year. And then next, Le'Veon Bell could be making his return for the Week 8 Browns matchup. What do you guys think about that?
Seems like that might be a ploy to trade him. I don't know. I will still be surprised if he shows up, especially given the Earl Thomas broken leg that just happened this past week and the holdout situations going on there. I will be pretty surprised if we do end up seeing him.
Yeah, I'll bet you're right about that. He doesn't seem too anxious to jump back on the field just from some of his comments that he made, regarding Earl Thomas.
And I don't know. I don't know why he would be. I mean, he's kind of stood his ground this long. I mean, I'm sure there's money as a motivating factor, but maybe it's a ploy to help show teams that if he's traded, he will honor that last part of his contract.
Mm-hmm. That could be.
And that was the next piece of news, Earl Thomas being carted off the field, showing off the middle finger to his team. And I didn't know what you guys thought about that, but it was surprising to me to see, within definitely less than 24 hours, maybe less than 12 hours, Le'Veon Bell putting that on Instagram or whatever it was, saying that he's going to continue to be the bad guy for guys like Earl Thomas. He'll be that monument. But then, right after that, it comes out that he wants to be a Steeler. He's going to play and looks to be back after the Week 7 bye. So not sure what to do with all that. Maybe you guys are right there, but what did you guys think ultimately about Earl Thomas showing that sign of affection to his Seahawks team?
Yeah,
that whole situation's been weird. It just has.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's probably a bad look for Tom. I mean, I get he's frustrated. I obviously would be extremely frustrated too, given the amount of sort of hesitancy he had about coming back, and then to break your leg. Flipping off your sideline is kind of strange, but for the most part, I certainly understand his frustration.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that's been the news as far as I saw, but we'll move on to our last segment here, and that's IQ Test. Rod, why don't you kick it off? Give us your bold prediction, and what we're going to do is grade it as either genius or lunacy or maybe somewhere in between.
Well, I'm going to stay on the Nick Chubb bandwagon, and I'm going to say that he gets 15 carries against the Ravens. 10 seemed too easy, so I'm going to go 15.
15 carries. That's a big spike up from 3.
That's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot compared to 3 and the 10 that he's had so far this season.
And against the Ravens. Let me see. I don't know, man. I'll go somewhere in between. It's because I think 10 is where I'm at. I think it's got to be 10. So I'm not going to go full lunacy on you, but I'll go somewhere in between.
Take it easy on me, huh?
That's right. Jake, what do you think of that, man?
I think in normal context, it's genius between what the common fan thinks, but in terms of lunacy, it's probably lunacy to think Hugh has made promises about carries, especially with Duke Johnson in the past. So it's a mixture. You guys are both on with that.
Right on. Jake, let's move to you. What's your bold prediction for this upcoming game?
I'm going to say that the Browns score 30 points for the second week in a row. I think that they're going to really surprise people, catch the Ravens sort of on a letdown week. They end up putting up 30 points again. I'm not sure they win, but I will say they put up 30 points again.
Rod, what say you?
I'll go genius. I mean, I feel like this offense is going to be able to score on pretty much anybody, and I know it was the Raiders, and everybody thinks the Raiders are horrible, but it just seems like with the weapons and the way Baker can throw the ball and the offensive line's coming together, that I think they can score. So I'll go genius.
Yeah, I can't deny that. I mean, I've got to go genius with you there. The receivers are on the jugs machines right now. Apparently, Nick Chubb's going to get 15 carries, so it's got to happen, right? We're going to score 30 again. Everything's gelling. The receivers are going to be more connected with Baker's, I guess, the way he throws the ball. Like you guys have said, he really throws a bullet. So,
well, if Nick Chubb gets 15 carries, that's 10 touchdowns right there.
Oh, he's at least. It's good. It's great analysis. It's really breaking it down. Oh man, I love it. Cool. So, last one here. I guess I'm going to go with this. It's. Tell me how bold it is. I'm going to say that the Browns win the next 3 in a row. They take down the Ravens at home. They beat the Chargers, and then they beat the Buccaneers.
I'm going to say lunacy until proven otherwise. How's that sound?
Very safe.
I'll say it's plausible. It's certainly plausible that it could happen. They've proven they can play with anyone. The Chargers and Buccaneers are very, very beatable. I do have some concerns about the Ravens, even though I'm kind of predicted that they'd be able to put up 30 points. But I do have some serious concerns about how the Ravens play, giving them fits in terms of defense and special teams. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm lunacy until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Jake. As much as I would love to see him win 3, the next 3, I'll be thrilled to death if they win 2 of those games. I just, the Ravens, just they seem to have a harder time against the Ravens than some other teams, and the Chargers are a pretty talented team. So, hopefully they can beat the Bucs and they can win at least one of those two other games.
Hey, that just means it is very bold, so I'll take it.
It is bold.
And, I think that the Ravens, this game upcoming is going to be the toughest game of those three. So really got to pull that one out. And then I think the Chargers and the Bucs will actually be the easier teams to beat after that. With that being said, Jake, can you leave the people with where they can find your work, your projects, your Twitters, everything, where they can find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, so like you mentioned earlier, I'm two Twitter accounts that I kind of handle: Browns Film Breakdown, which is at Browns Film BDN. My personal account, which is at Jake_Burns18. I have some work on the OBR, so I encourage you guys to subscribe to some pretty good content on there. Some good writers, some good X&O analysis. I'm on there every now and again on Waiting for Next Year, and then there's also the Browns Film Breakdown YouTube channel. I post a couple videos a week on. Pick out a couple of spotlight areas and shine some light on those. And then sort of last thing you can obviously find me on is I run my own podcast with John Colosimo called Browns Film Breakdown Podcast too. So that's another one that we do a couple episodes a week. So if you're craving more lunatic takes, I provide them there as well.
Hey, you heard it here. Go listen to Jake's podcast there. And Rod, any last words?
Hey, I just want to thank Jake for coming on. It's great Browns talk today, and go Browns. Let's get another win this week.
I feel like my IQ has been raised, man. This has been the Brownie Sunday podcast. Cheers.